is the intellectual laziness. All right, so you have the Labour Party with repeated election victories. You have a weak, yes, weak. The opposition is weak. It's not numbers that make you strong as an opposition. Look at Gonzalez over there in St. Vincent's. One man in Parliament, and he's providing effective opposition. Yes, even when the PNP was not in Parliament, you know, they were a stronger opposition. Yes, the opposition is fragmented and it is weak. It is very weak. As a matter of fact, maybe it is one of the weakest opposition we have had. The malignant influence of money is probably what is propping up the opposition. The money. And then you have the strong leadership brand of wholeness, and you have economic stability associated with the Jamaica Labour Party. This system remains democratic. Hear me carefully, but competition weakens. Although we have a democratic system, the opposition is weak. Now, I want to tell you that Jamaica could be moving towards this pattern. The pattern where it goes into a protracted period of one-party dominance. So the 18.5 years of the, if you've been following me, of the PNP was the first time. Now, I see no indication right now that says to me that the Jamaica Labour Party is on course to not win the next election. Several structural factors could benefit the JLP in the long run. Firstly, economic credibility. Now, this is where the PNP lost yesterday. The economy is the strongest point in the Jamaica Labour Party's armor. In recent times, they have been trying to fix crime. The Jamaica Labour Party's strongest point is on the economy. And it started under Nigel Clark. Well, it started under Orly Shaw before, ballooned under Clark, and now anti-favor. The opposition did not do anything yesterday to seize that from the government. The government's economic credibility remained intact. The opposition did not discredit the budget yesterday. And if you are going to advance as an opposition, you have to start with that. Quite frankly, tacitly, Robinson endorsed the government when he suggested that the country is enjoying macroeconomic stability. Now, that is true, but for an opposition spokesman to admit that the country is stable economically suggests that the PNP don't have any answer. Yes? Now, the government is strongly associated with debt reduction, low unemployment, and fiscal discipline. These policies strengthens Jamaica's reputation with investors and international institutions. If voters associate that stability with the JLP brand, the party can't lose. It is going to have a long trust. Secondly, the leadership stability. Wholeness has become one of Jamaica's longest serving modern leaders. The only prime minister who has served longer than Wholeness is P.J. Patterson. P.J. Patterson did 14 years. Wholeness is now in his 11th. If he serves out this term, Holness will become the longest serving prime minister Jamaica has. My understanding is that the Jamaica Labour Party is very much focused on breaking PJ's record. The politics is going to get very interesting. The brand of Holness emphasizes technocratic governance, modernization, and stability. Now, watch me, because I'm going to go to why it's going to be very interesting. Long periods of consistent leadership anchors dominant parties. When you look in the Labour Party today, you don't see a wiggle room of disunity. There's nothing you can point to that says, well, the party is not, they don't have it together. Very tight, technocratic, modern, stable. And then the opposition is struggling. The Labour Party is dominant. They have a technocratic leader, very, very articulate, attractive, handsome. The girls, them love him. Young people love him. Children love him. Old people love him. Stable leadership. And when you look across on the opposition side, you see a man digging out his mouth in the parliament. Not attractive. Don't dress nice. The girls, them don't love him. The children don't love him. What does he come to the table with? Politics is also about PR, it's branding. There is internal divisions, unclear messaging, and a leadership turnover. Then it becomes harder to mount an effective challenge. Dominant party systems often emerge not only because the governing party is strong, but because the opposition is weak. And that is what happened in the 90s. So it's not that the PNP was so strong and dominant. It was because the Labour Party was one time in shambles. Quite frankly, the Labour Party contested an election with the National Democratic Movement. The National Democratic Movement got over 30,000 votes. Bruce Golding ran in Central St. Catherine. Okay, it don't work. So they did not help themselves by being so fractious. The other point I want you to underline is that there is a generational shift in Jamaica. Older Jamaican politics involves strong emotional party identity. If you were born in the 60s and 70s or in the 50s, your type of politics is different from the type of politics of today. Protecting Jamaica made this point the other night about the link between colonialism and patronage politics. One of the advice I want to give to my friends in the opposition is that they are to go to a retreat. I would tell the opposition, take a break. Take a break and go and look at the politics that you are practicing. It is archaic, it is old, it is not resonating with the people of Jamaica. The opposition is still practicing the politics that got them to power in the 70s and the 90s. Jamaicans have moved on. There's a subject when you do psychology that is called generationalism, where you have to understand how generations shifts. Even myself, I must tell you, I've had to be keeping up with the times, the technology, the thinking. Okay? the older Jamaican politics involves strong emotional party identity. Young voters tend to be more pragmatic, less ideologically attached, more focused on economic opportunity. Them are young people here, no business with no socialism and no communism. Them are young people here want to drive crown and and buy their house and then car. Yeah, not ideology. If the governing party therefore delivers stability, younger voters are going to stick to the status quo longer. And so the most realistic scenario for Jamaica is that we're going to find that the next election cycle will open up several interesting things that will be fascinating to understand. As I said earlier, that Jamaica has built one of the most competitive two-party systems in the developing world since 1962. Right? Two main parties in Jamaica, the Jamaica Labour Party and the People's National Party. They have been alternated multiple times. Many post-colonial democracies have ended up with one dominant party, weak oppositions, and unstable elections. Jamaica has avoided that pattern. To our credit, we have built one of the most competitive two-party systems in the developing world, right? Instead, voters repeatedly replace governments when dissatisfaction grows. So governments in Jamaica change when there is high dissatisfaction. Now, Jamaican voters historically behave in what political scientists call a corrective cycle. So are you saying something, moderator?
Yes, neighbor. Sorry. Listeners, you're not tapping enough. Please tap the screen. Thanks, neighbor. And for those of you who haven't, please repost the live.
Yeah. Okay. I see your question, Bridget. Okay. So the behavior of the Jamaican voters is what the political scientists call corrective cycle. Now, under the corrective cycle, a party governs for about 8 to 12 years. During that time, economic frustration builds and voters elect the other party to correct the situation. And I can give you some examples. In 1980, Michael Manley and the PNP lost power after economic crises in the 1970s. So, corrective cycle. Edward Seaga and the JLP lost power in 1989 after what we could describe as economic fatigue. I remember, Seaga promised much, but had to deal with the cultural nuances of the generation that experienced colonialism and had the patronage clientelistic politics encased into their equilibrium, their social equilibrium as people. And then the long PNP period under PJ Patterson eventually ended in 2007 when voters elected the JLP again under a message of change. Jamaica needs a change now. The rotation kept both parties competitive. Now, what is changing now? Listeners, what is changing now? 3 deeper shifts may be altering that whole cycle. That PNP to JLP, PNP to JLP, and if I should come up with a thesis from this, I'm trying to point out to my listeners that we are entering a period, in my view, of one party dominant in Jamaica, a one party dominance within a democratic society. So it's not that the Lima party will always win, but we are entering a period of one party dominance. You can debate my arguments when you finish, but I'm presenting to you the facts based on my research. What is changing now? 3 deeper shifts may be altering that whole cycle. 1, what I call economic convergence. Both the Jamaica Labour Party and the People's National Party are almost agreed on the similar macroeconomic policies. There is no difference, no significant difference in the macroeconomic policies of the government. Both parties signed off on the fiscal rules, and the Bruce Golding government, the Portia government, and now the Andrew Holness government have basically, there's not much of a difference. Fiscal discipline, reforms which were piloted by both parties and agreed with by the IMF, the ideological swings have stopped. Okay? So bear that in mind. Secondly, that there is what I call institutional maturity. Jamaica now has stronger economic institutions. We're not likely to go back to the Finac era because we now have an independent central bank. There are the fiscal responsibility frameworks, and there is improved management of the nation's debt. And this now reduces the risk of major economic crises that previously triggered government change. There is nothing suggesting that the economy is going to collapse. Nothing. Nothing that Mr. Robinson said suggested that Jamaica is in any economic crisis. Institutional maturity. And then the whole matter of leadership branding. Modern politics is increasingly centered on leadership image. The administration of Andrew Holness has emphasized, as I said before, technocratic governance, long-term economic planning, and stability and modernization. If voters associate national stability with one-party brand, political cycles slow. The real surprise here then is that Jamaica might be entering its first modern performance democracy. Earlier, politics in Jamaica was driven largely by ideological identity, class politics, though some of it still remains, and strong party loyalty. The People's National Party, during their last campaign, made some major blunders. And that's why I'm saying to you, they are stuck in the 90s and probably the 70s. this ideological identity, blood and fire comrades, yes, class politics, strong party loyalty. Today, it appears to be shifting towards performance-based voting. In other words, a lot of people who will turn up to vote at the polls will not associate themselves with either of the parties. They will vote for performance of the government. The people will vote not because they are aligned to any party, but because they feel that the government is performing. In other words, they are going to ask, is the economy stable? Are jobs available? Is the government competent? If the answer to those questions are yes, is yes, the government will not change. Not going to change on ideology, not going to change on class politics, not going to change on party loyalty. It's going to be kept based on the performance of the government. Is the economy stable? Yes. Are jobs available? Yes. Is the government competent? Yes. Because remember I said before that the Labour Party is pushing the technocratic competence of its leader, strong on managerial skills, managing the country through crises. Now, this is historically significant at 11 minutes after 8 o'clock. This is historically significant because if the JLP continue to win elections under Andrew Holness or his successors, Jamaica could move into a political phase where government may stay in power for 20 years or more. And you know, I have a model that I have developed for the podcast, which doesn't go well for the PNP at this time, you know. Doesn't go well for them at all. Opposition parties take longer to recover under this, and elections revolve around competence rather than ideology. That would be a new phase in the Jamaican democracy. And so for decades, Jamaica was considered one of the most balanced two-party democracies in the Caribbean. But the country may now, hear me carefully, Jamaica is now transitioning towards a system where economic stability and leadership credibility allow one party to dominate for long periods. In other words, economic recovery, economic stability, and the aspirations of the Jamaican people is likely to keep this government in power for a very long time. And when Corinthia Morrison said that 89 Hope Road may become a museum, it may very well be a prophetic truth. Not because the democracy is weak, but there is a shift, and it's a surprising insight that we must be aware of as political watchers. Economic stability and leadership is going to be on the ballot. Let me close by telling you something that is underappreciated, shaping Jamaica's political potential dominant party phase. Let me tell you something that is, and this is Bridget, this is answering your question. Jamaica's demographics is changing. The youth vote is now roughly 60% of Jamaica's population under 40. Roughly 60% of Jamaica's population is under the age of 40. That don't include you, Bridget. You are over 40. 60%. These younger voters grew up in a period of relative stability, low inflation, and economic reform. They are the post-2000 voters. Now, I give a piece of advice to the Jamaica Labour Party. Focus here. Focus your attention here. The demographic of this 60%. They are more pragmatic, focus on jobs, security, and economic opportunity rather than ideological loyalty. What drove 411,000 people to the polls on behalf of the PNP was not a need for change. It was party loyalty. The PNP was able to pull out its loyalists. Using money, it motivated its loyalists and it pulled them out. Get that. Jamaica has become more urbanized. Now you have rural Jamaica, which is a country, and you have urban Jamaica, which is a town, St. Catherine, Portmore, Montego Bay, the major cities. Urban voters are more exposed to economic data. We have on this program, Harry, social media, global trends, which can favor performance-driven governance over party identity. Then you have educational attainment has increased over the last 20 years. They are more informed voters, and they tend to reward competence and tangible result rather than historical party narratives. This is where the PNP is struggling. The PNP is relying on historical party narratives, manly. You notice that the People's National Party, I've never heard it in the Jamaica Labour Party. Always talking about, it's almost like the comrades want to wake up manly. Every election, manly. You hear them talk about manly. Yes? Manly dead how long ago, and the PNP still putting manly in front of the Jamaican voters. You know, one man come here and tell me the other day, said the party is cultic. Him name? What man name, Mr. Moderator? Quotes.
Craig.
Yeah, so the party is cultic, and I'm wondering if that is true, you know, because why on God's earth, when they make manly rest in peace? Make manly rest in peace, brethren. You don't want to. It is the mistake the party is making. Well, they drew for PJ and George Davis, send him back to bed. Portia Simpson, well, they can't say much about Sister P. Sister P not feel so well. Yes. And they go back for manly. You want my children know anything about manly? This generation, which is 60% of the population, you think they know anything about manly? I've never heard the Jamaica Labour Party campaigning on Mr. Siaga or Bruce Coley. Yet the PNP is going back to the historical party narratives. Now, this has very serious implications for party politics, because younger voters who have seen stability under the JLP prefer continuity over experimentation. And because of that, it reduces the automatic corrective vote. If you were following me earlier, you'd hear me speak of the corrective vote, where voters change government to correct a problem. Here is where now the opposition erred with their budget theme. Mr. Robinson puts the narrative out there that Jamaica needs to be fixed. Mr. Robinson, the opposition is now telling 60% of Jamaicans that grew up under economic stability that the country won't fix. You know, why I tell you, what a bankrupt set of people. They don't have no ideas, man. You think I should help them, moderator? Anyway.
Help who, neighbor? Help who?
The comrades. You don't help them. No comment. The corrective vote that used to swing power back to the PNP after a term or two. There is no corrective vote, comrades. Don't look for that, because the people are experiencing economic stability. Don't fix nothing. You can't come to the people of Jamaica and go tell them about you want to fix. Fix what? You know, since the country will move forward. Huh? You can't do that. No. Older generations often voted along ideological lines. Them are blood and fire comrades. Them generation, no blood and fire, nothing. They are interested in their own personal well-being, their own personal development. They want to save their money, buy them car, build them house, get them work. Them no ideology. They are not cultic. Yes? They are going to vote for stability. They are going to go vote for governance, and you can't fool them. That's one other thing that I need to point out, you know. I see the Gleaner today, last May, in his editorial cartoon, suggesting that the government is blaming Melissa and the war in the Gulf for the problems in Jamaica. Yes, the Gleaner is obviously campaigning for the PNP, but I'll get to that at another time. Yes. Younger generations are less emotionally tied to party history. This shifts elections towards evaluating results and leadership credibility, right? And it amplifies the leadership brand. Leaders like Wholeness, who project competence and trustworthiness, benefit from this. He's going to benefit from the 60% than from older voters. And make no bones about it. The older you are, the more likely you are to not make it to 2030. There are many people who, were dragged out of their beds to cast their final X. They will not make it to 2030 because their time come. No, and that is not a joke. It's a serious thing. They are just past their best, and they will not be able to vote come 2030 because time come to go home. Yes. And so the argument is that Jamaica may be entering a modern dominant party phase for the first time or the second time in its history, where the Jamaica Labour Party will dominate the party simply because the country is experiencing economic stability. Because I feel that elections will be increasingly decided by leadership and performance rather than party loyalty. The People's National Party faces structural challenges to overcome the JLP's growing credibility with younger voters. Very strong structural challenges the PNP faces to deal with this demographic. And therefore, the thing I'd like to end with at 24 after 8 o'clock is that, you know what they call the median age? Median age is rising. Working age majorities. That Jamaica median age is over 32 years as of 2026. That's and the working age make up about the largest share of the population. That's about 64%. And this is now a shift, because it shifts away from a very young population towards a more balanced age structure. More people are in their prime economic years, a group typically more concerned with jobs, cost of living, and stability than, the ideological divides. And so young people, especially ages 18 to 24, have accounted for a large share of the newly registered voters in the recent electoral updates. Over 70% of new voters have been young people. 70%. Right? And this Gen Z, age 18 to 29, is about 384,000. Significant segment of the electorate. 384,000. We will pick this up some other time. You hear? Moderator, we don't have a lot of time, so let me stop it here. It's going to be interesting as we go forward.
Good evening, neighbor Caroline, Auntie G, Miss Gatekeeper.
Protecting. Good evening.
Yeah.
Harry,
Protecting Jamaica. As you listen to the opposition spokesman on finance yesterday, am I not correct that it appears as if the opposition really is unable to challenge the government when it comes on to economic management? That there was nothing really that was challenging, was captivating. Now, let's not even speak about the speech. You are old enough to know that coming out of budget debates, the opposition comes with big ideas that could say, yes, capturing the imagination of the people. What we heard yesterday was it's almost as if the opposition has acquiesced and is in full support of the government. A little criticism here and there, but nothing fundamentally different. Is that not true?
Yes, neighbor, that is true. I didn't listen to the entire presentation. I just saw part of it. I mean, I usually go back and listen after, because I don't really have them prime time there for waste palm PMP. Just being honest, but I heard enough to know that it has become a struggle for the PMP to really function and exist in this new Jamaica, neighbor. If you notice, it is the third year that they are trying to sink in this idea that they are the architects of the stability and the financial robustness, economic robustness that Jamaica is experiencing. And
which tacitly is an endorsement of the government, right?
Yes, because they're struggling to take their part of the pie because they refuse to be honest. And if you notice,
Yes.
it is the third year on that they have to be reminding people that they had something to do with it, you know?
Yes.
And
Almost as if they are becoming irrelevant.
yes.
In the economic debate.
Yes, in the economic, they are already irrelevant in one of the most important debates in the region, which is a crime debate, national security, and they are now becoming irrelevant in the economic debate because partly so, and I heard you said it last night, they refuse to be honest. They could have just decided to be honest and take credit for the part that they championed for 4 years and give respect to the others who played a part to get us to this point. But because of this refusal to be honest, then it seems as if Jamaicans are really turning their backs on them. And you see this continued again. Notice, neighbor, they continue to repeat this thing that they are the ones who engineered the current economic conditions. And then it is the second time since September that I hear this nonsense about 402,000 people who voted for them.
Yes.
And what you realize is they have become so outdated already since September 3rd.
Yes.
That they have to be reminding people of this number. I've never seen this before. Before. Just to highlight, I've never seen this before. But when you get to that point, when your boss get to the point where him have to walk around in a company and beat in chest and say, "I'm here the boss," it means him have no respect. Because the boss is known whether he is not visibly present or he is. The boss is known, and it comes primarily out of respect because of not just because of status, but other factors play a role. So when you have to come out and beat up your chest the third year in, it's because it's a lie and you're struggling when you could have just said, you know what, Bruce Golding in October 2010 passed the fiscal accountability framework, and then we took it up in 2012 and we added the regulations, and since then we have been carrying through, and now the government has taken over, and so we are to also be recognized having steered the ship to the point. They cannot do that because they are innately dishonest, and it is costing them politically.
Absolutely. Now, I want you to engage me and the listeners for a few moments in this dialogue, Protected. Harry, please come in at any time you want. Protected. I looked at something today, and I believe, Protecting, that if the Jamaica Labour Party continues to keep the economy stable, and by stable I mean jobs are provided, the debt is being paid down, the economy is experiencing even minor growth. This stability is going to be hard to challenge, Protecting, because the country has moved away from the ideological politics of the 70s and are now looking at the pragmatic, steady leadership that the country deserves. And I would even want you to make this not a political discussion, but an intellectual discussion, that a party that is enjoying this type of stability is not going to be easily challenged at the polls.
No, neighbor. It is not going to be easy. It is not easy already. I mean, the opposition had one real chance. Real chance. And that chance was on September 3rd. There is no other chance for the PNP in Jamaica. And I mean, I'm not just saying that.
For the immediate future. For the immediate future.
Yeah, I mean, because when I look at it a little bit broader, neighbor.
Okay.
There are people in the JLP now, neighbor, who are natural leaders, and they are younger than the current prime minister. There are people like Matty Samuda, Floyd Green, Delano Seavright, you know?
Dana Morris Dixon.
Dana Morris Dixon. There are people like this young mayor out there in Montego Bay who I'm sure when one of those stalwarts out there in St. James they are ready to retire, he's gonna get one of those seats. And Richard Vernon is very bright. Now, when you look at that broad spectrum of possible leaders to take over the JLP, people who have good standing nationally, their profile is good. It is going to be very, very, very hard, even after Andrew Holness leaves in the next 15 years. It is going to be very hard for the PNP to make that U-turn that they need to make. Because they need to make a U-turn. You know, because the 60s, 70s political ideology doesn't work in modern politics. And
isn't that part of the challenge they're having? If I may just intervene, isn't that part of the challenge that separates them from the JLP? No, is that the Jamaica Labour Party is offering technocratic new leadership, focusing on the economy, focusing on providing opportunities for the people, while the PNP is expecting support from their ideological past, their blood and fire comrades. That is not cutting it at all.
No, and it shows you the deficiencies, the great deficiencies, grave deficiencies in the PNP. And it goes back to their roots. The PNP was not established as a party that really was interested in technocratically establishing a system that will work in the favor of the masses. They weren't interested in that. The PNP was always it was established as the party that had a leader who was very good with words. Yes, when he realized that what he wanted to accomplish could not be accomplished, so he pivoted to Jamaica, because he didn't start it out there. So he pivoted to Jamaica. And it was just words, empty words. When you have that kind of foundation that is built in the sand, it's only a matter of time when the tides rise that the foundation will be exposed. And what is happening with the PNP now, neighbor, is that the very foundation of its establishment is being exposed. And so they keep going back, because that is the only era, the ideological era of Michael Manley, that robust, bully kind ideological period was their strongest period. And that period didn't just get strong on the back of ideology either, neighbor. There was an establishment of this kind of anarchical system where they created fear around the ideology. And so the fear was getting people in line, and then people got in line and they had to pay attention to the ideology, and then they ended up liking the ideology. And so the PNP became and was established out of that period. What we're finding, as you have heard me say many times before, that age group of PNP, they're aging out and dying out. And so what the PNP is experiencing is a national renewal in the politics, because no longer is anybody afraid of bullyism and strongmanism. And also, the young people are more pragmatic. The young people are more liberal, because it's modern time. And so the politics has moved past the PNP of the 70s. And so the PNP is finding it hard to survive. They're finding it hard to find their footing in this new modern politics. The JLP, who have always been a buoyant party, who have always been a pragmatic group of people, they already have that kind of foundation of pragmatism. They already have that foundation of nation building. They already have that foundation of innovation. And so while the JLP is strengthening that aspect of their party and their existence, the PMP is finding it hard to grab onto straws. Because as you said rightfully, neighbor, the person who is now 75 who them take out all per shoulder if go vote, we're not sure that the person they're going to survive till 2030.
When we may not make it at all.
And there's a large number of those people who the PMP relies on. And so as we move forward, again, neighbor, one more thing before you put the next point forward. We have to remember while we're discussing this matter in this context, that about 125 to 140,000 of the 400,000 people were budgeted for very hugely, bigly, as Donald Trump would say. They were budgeted for. There was a general election and there was a by-election on September 3rd, pun intended. There was a general election and there was a by-election. So the weakness of the PMP is emerging when you see them, every public platform they take, every time they get a chance to speak nationally, they remind people that 400,000 people voted for them. That is one of the clearest signs of weakness you can ever imagine.
Right. No, protecting. When a government is going to foul up and lose, the country is riddled with crime. There is a cost of living crisis. There is corruption. The economy is bad. These are the things that opposition party use to propel them into power. But none of that is happening in Jamaica. Even with a hurricane, the economy remains stable and is poised to grow this year. What I'm asking is, where is the opening? Where is the opening for the PNP anytime soon? And should not, even as we reflect on that, isn't it not commendable that a government retains this amount of stability and credibility? Because while we talk about the opposition coming forward, the credit should go to the government for doing so well.
Neighbor, there's no opening, and I don't think as we move forward there will be any opening. No, look at it. The government.
So you expect crime to continue to be stable?
By the end of this year, neighbor, if we continue at say 25%, we don't have to do 40% as last year, even though the numbers will, it will be a few too many. But even if we were to hold 25%, by the end of this year, it will be just about 450 lives lost to that. And I do not believe that the strategy going into the rest of the year, that the security forces are not going to tighten up. I believe that they are putting everything at it and they are going to tighten up, and the reduction percentage rate will go back to about 30, 35, even 40%. So just imagine this. The government took over Old House 2016. With the ceiling falling down, leaking roofs, the doors were damaged, the plumbing were damaged. Now look at it. In restoring this house, the roof was changed, the ceiling was fixed, the doors were changed, and the plumbing fixed.
Yes.
So you started out with a place that was very difficult to live in. But as you moved ahead, repairing these deficiencies, there are two things that happen. You're living a little bit more comfortable, but you have less issues dealing with. You have literally solved some of the problems. You have found solutions for some of the problems. So it's like you have a list and you just tick off each problem you solve.
Yes.
Now, it might still want paint. And you might still want pave your driveway. But the living condition inside has improved. considerably, even though the paint on the wall still won't change. So what you find out is, because it is your house where you live in and you continue to live in it, the next time your situation change, maybe you took a loan 2 years ago to do it and you're close to the end of paying off that loan. So by the time you don't pay off the loan, you take another small one. So 2 years in, 3 years in. So what is happening is, as you move ahead, as time progresses, the improvements happen over that time. Now, neighbor, just look at it this way. By 2030, St. Elizabeth is going to have a new city in Black River.
Wow.
By 2030, there are more developments in Kingston. Boundbrook will complete. By 2030, because right now we're about 98% with the Montego Bay bypass. And the bypass that goes up through Anchovy, that can lead back to Westmoreland, that is on its way maybe about 45%. By 2030, that will finish. By 2030, the airport start in Negril are maybe done. By 2030, the expansion of the port happens and we have more ships coming. We're able to store more containers. By 2030, the economic zone out of Ferry there I go complete, because more companies are now building to add to that. So what you find, neighbor, is a massive expansion in the economy. And what will that bring? It will bring new jobs. So if we're currently at 3.8%, hopefully the government find a messaging to message to the PMP if you tell them if you go look training and go look work. Because the new Jamaica will force them to go look work. So by 2030, with this expansion, neighbor, what you find is the only thing left is for minimum wage now to be increased more significantly. Because the economy will be able. The expansion is going to be with new commodity suppliers too. It is going to be new business. All right, look at one possible business now, neighbor. We have some skyscrapers going up. It's a special type of skilled person who it will take to clean the side of those buildings and paint them. So it's a new economy you open up right there, so.
Yes, sir. Hold on there for me, because I want you to help me to help the listeners to appreciate what we are talking about here tonight. We are saying, protecting, that the demographic factor also is actually one of the most underappreciated forces shaping Jamaica's potential dominant party phase. What you are saying is that the Jamaica Labour Party is going to be dominant going forward because of several factors that are mitigating against the People's National Party. One of them is the fact that the economy is going to be stable and probably growing. The other is, you are saying, crime. Crime is going to continue its downward spiral. And the third one, protecting, which I'd love to hear you on before I bring in Harry, gatekeeper, and the other, and the thing, is the youthful and pragmatic electorate protecting. The young people grew up in a country where they are not into any ideological politics. They are looking at the facts before them. They can't be coerced. They know what is happening. They listen to Politics Plus, and these young people make up the largest part of the population. Don't you think that is a factor that is going to spell trouble for the PNP in 2030?
It's the biggest factor, neighbor. It is the biggest factor. For example, young people nowadays, they don't want to engage in meaningless conversations. Conversations like these, they appreciate. We have people like Harry here. We have more people, young people, who they come to listen, they might not participate.
And you're talking about people under the age of 40. We're not talking about teenagers.
Yes, under the age of 40. But even up to about 50, 53, neighbor, because they identify with Andrew. They identify with his age because they are coming from his time. It is his generation. So when Andrew speaks and Andrew says, listen me, every ghetto youth is a star and him want every man and woman in a Jamaica to own them own house. It means something. It means something to them. Now, these young people, you know, what is missing, and you hear me belabor it time after time, what is missing? We still need to have a sort of reflective kind of conversation, but we need to have it nationally. What it will do is to remind, because the young people now see Andrew. Them grew up under Andrew 10 years now. So who was 10 when Andrew came in is now 20, and they go vote. And by the time 2030 come, them at 25, 27. Who was 20 is now 25, then going to be 30. So a lot of these young people, they don't know too much about the history of the PMP. So, and that's why I've taken up the job for this period for the next 3 years before we go in an election mode. To teach.
You're going to go into election mode.
Yeah, in 3 years' time. To teach
the
PMP's dark, evil past. Because what we need to do now, you know, a lot of young people, they see Andrew doing this, but the PMP will come and say we can do it too, because the PMP know, if you realize, neighbor, they are repositioning themselves as if they were born in 2016 or 2012.
Yes.
They don't want
which I think is a mistake. Which I think is a mistake.
It's a very big mistake. Now, because they are going to do that, and yes, they are going to have some influence, because remember, they have a national profile just the same. And while the overall PMP might not appeal to a lot of people, there are elements within the PMP who people will listen to and they can influence.
Absolutely.
Right. So people like myself, but I believe also to have the greatest impact should also come from Party Central. Communicate the history of the JLP setting up the foundations of Jamaica and the history of the PMP breaking those foundations down. So as we move into the future, these young people, having both sides of the story, many of them will do research on their own, because research is at your fingertip now. You don't have to go to a library, go take up the encyclopedia anymore. They will now make up their minds more confidently. Not just Brogard and Clarks and 1 p.m., but more confidently with very useful and purposeful information. As we move into 2030, neighbor, if we do this, the PMP will almost have no chance. They will have no chance of regaining state power in Jamaica. And it's going to be worse moving from 2030 to 2035. Because by then, whatever they relied on, which is Michael Manley, will be dead, done and dusted, because those people who support Michael Manley's kind of ideology, they will be no more in our society. And so the PMP, they're finding it hard now, and their only last chance that existed to unseat the JLP before another 15 years was on the 3rd of September, and they missed that chance because they could not be honest. That's the only thing. They missed the chance.
Coming back.
The only chance that.
Coming back.
Listeners, could you please continue to tap and share, please? And if you're just joining us, please repost the live.
My listeners, political discussions should inform, not manipulate. We challenge ideas regardless of that. Talking about the PNP tonight, well, they don't have a chance. Whether in Kingston, London, Toronto, New York, Jamaicans everywhere deserve a voice. A voice in the conversation. You have a voice here on Politics Plus. Yeah, we can disagree strongly while still maintaining respect and facts. Politics does not exist in isolation. We We connect governance to economics. Harry is on. We connect governance to crime, development, and everyday Jamaican life. Listeners, and not just an audience, you know. They are participants in the national discussion. Politics Plus is on this Friday. Take a minute and send us a gift. Yep. And of course, please remember tomorrow is our anniversary. Will you be helping us to celebrate? You better. Gatekeeper, good night to you. Good night, G-Keeper.
Good night. Brothers and sisters, you hear how my nephew bad? I'm bad like a yas.
Is your nephew?
He's not an ordinary young man, you know. This is a prophet. A couple of years ago, I tell you something, neighbor. When he just walked into that room, I said to the people, and everyone that is there wanted to say amen to me. I said, listen to me, this is not an ordinary youth, you know. This is a youth sent from God, and every word that he spit out in prophecy was high. When I tell you say high, I mean real high. He's so articulate. Whatever he said, he's saying it. His ears, it is into God's ears. Him hearing what God says, and he spit it out through his mouth. You hear me? I tell you.
Yes.
So when you come here, no one talk. A lot of people can big me up and say, yes, a truth. Because I tell you, say it's not an ordinary youth company. This. God sent him through one little door and give him one seat. So wherever he come and him sit down and him speak out his mouth, it is prophecy. Everything him talk over the years happening. It happened. And this what him said tonight. Believe me. Let me tell you something, man. It's the youth, yeah, man. A good seminar spend pan him, you know, man. I'm God's son, you know. I'm spend pan him, I'm not shame today here. You hear me? I tell you, neighbor, big up yourself, big up Caroline, Harry, Squatty, Scratchy,
Pretty. No, Squitty over here.
Scratchy me attack. Yes. Scratchy fan Canada me attack. You know, big him up, and all of them, Joshua, and all of them will come over here. So me I tell you, it's a program live on. It's a platform live on forever. Andrew, any which party they put your ears right here. So now, me I tell you, this hour bring out all the platform on TikTok. Me I tell you, real, all me in my old days, I can't sit down and listen. Me just I take back cheese, because them a youth we are come now. Them a neighbor right, yeah. Them bad like a yards. So me just I take back seat, you know. Me not talk about experience, but me need to go sit down. Because them they are the old days with Michael Manley, all like me here, the one when he Fitz Jackson, that the old man need to go sit down. You know, see it. Him come out that spilling mouth full of, I can't talk the word. And he need to sit down and give the young people them a chance. He might go talk him back. The Cuban government. What about the people of Cuba? My cousin come from Cuba, not Jamaica, become Noir. And she was there. She's the third best interpreter of Spanish in Jamaica. Used to work at Ministry of Health. And in the PMP government, I don't know where she did that, you know, because them in a PMP, so I don't look upon them. But let me tell you something. Me have to tell you something, neighbor. The people, them glad. You hear? Me used to move around the can. You think a little Cuban, me married off of Jamaica and give them papers. Me get girls and married to them. So when me attack of experience. So when he comes up and a spilling mouth full of no burger, me no look upon him. Because remember, them are young people are sense. Them not stupid, them not idiot. But them attack a book and them a live it. And maybe tell we no want no change at Jamaica. And you go to the tell judgment. But I do not send me a hell because me a bad girl. You know, send me a hell because Andrew go to the pan God right hand. And I fix up everything for Jamaica. Me go to Jamaica and me can't believe see Jamaica when me left for Jamaica. And the Jamaica when me left, me go back go see. So let me tell you something. You do what you do. And this platform will forever be on top. Big up yourself, neighbor. Big up yourself, Caroline. Big up yourself. Oh my God, my young people. I really respect you. Big up on the nice clean self. And all the labor rights and all the neighbor rights. Big up on yourself. Thank you, me gone. Bye.
Take care of yourself.
Yes,
okay. All right. Great to have you. Gatekeeper. 'Podcast is on this Friday. 954-635-8732 is the Zelle account. If you're in Canada, you can contribute to the podcast. WilliamsJavier170@gmail.com. Get in touch with Caroline and she'll give you the information. You're beautiful. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Saying good night to Rochelle. Hey Rochelle, how you doing? Politics Plus podcast. Big news for you tomorrow. Wow. I'm so excited. I am so excited. We're celebrating one glorious year. Scratchy, hi. How you doing? Are you as excited as I am? 1 year, Scratchy.
I mean, neighbor, you have to be excited in the neighbor. You know, we've been here for 1 year now. So we have to definitely more than excited, neighbor. More than excited, neighbor.
Yes, sir. We have something big to announce tomorrow. Wow. You can't afford to miss it. Shout it out to your neighbors all over the world. The podcast gone abroad. Whoa! This podcast have a lot of beautiful girls, beautiful girls. One copy. I hope you have your gate pass tomorrow. Do you have your gate pass for the party tomorrow? Huh? You gate pass, eh? Disappear from me. Staying with us, listeners. We have Josephine Palmer joining us before we go to Harry. Josephine, hi. Hello. Josephine, hi. No, we don't have that one. Okay. Harry?
I'm your neighbor. Night, everybody.
What's your take on this dominant party risk analysis that we're looking at tonight, Harry? Do you see any indicators that the Jamaica Labour Party is not likely to continue to be just dominant in the politics for the next 2 decades or so?
Well, to be honest, neighbor, it's really a one-party show currently in governance. Because sad to say, I'm big when it comes on to the democratic process and believe in a strong opposition, doesn't matter who it is. And I think the current opposition we have is too weak to even be called the opposition for Jamaica. They, instead of focusing on putting the people first, they are still there pretty much campaigning. I mean, we've heard the opposition leader quoting the 401,913 people. We've now heard the finance minister with the same, opposition finance minister with the same rhetoric. And as such, they keep standing along that line. Even in, this is the worst part, even in a crisis, neighbor, the worst hurricane in this hemisphere for 174 years, we still hear the opposition speaks of the same number of persons, which shows that they aren't ready for the rest of Jamaica, neighbor. It shows that they are partisan in everything they do, and as such, you don't want to trust a team of that nature, because then the fact that they're stating it explicitly, it's not being hidden, it's not being said with an undertone, it is blatantly being said. You're being given not just the words, but the figure as well, shows that they will be governing for just a portion off, as the opposition leader speaks. So at this moment, neighbor, they have actually handed the reign to the current administration, which is a sad day for democracy. I mean, democracy is not perfect, but it is what we have, and yes, is what has been working for us. And we've spoken many a times in terms of, them getting layups. I've always pointed out the layups that the opposition have had, because of course, no governing administration is perfect, neighbor. So there will always be shortcomings, there will be short stop, there will be little loopholes that the opposition should take advantage of, especially when you look at this opposition being rejected 3 times.
Yes.
So, neighbor, if a crumb fall as an opposition, you're supposed to be picking it up and run with it. No pun intended with the opposition there. But the truth is, you have to maximize on any opportunity you get, not for the party, but for the people of Jamaica, to show them that you still care, irregardless of them rejecting you 3 consecutive times, right? It's that very tough job when you're in opposition that long. Scratchy can talk to about how long the Jamaica Labour Party was in opposition for, what it felt, what it meant, right? And as such, what it took for them to emerge from the ashes, because it was a very long time, neighbor. And
yes,
to be honest, for the People's National Party to be considered for 2030, because make no mistake, there's no snap election calling. No election will be calling well before it's time. And they have to know that. They have to plan around that as well. But they have to be looking at what the finance minister spoke, the 20-year-olds. Because that was a strategy, to be honest, that actually got the Jamaica Labour Party back on their feet for 2016 in preparing for this period. They targeted the young persons, right? Because for my generation, my Scratchy would share the same generation, and the 20-year-olds going down, they would have grown up, neighbor, and seeing their parents being, not so much fond of governance, not so fond of the political process either. And what we have to understand is that shaped us. It shaped how we look at government. It shaped how we look at our own survival. And as such, it is showing more now than ever that really and truly this generation don't necessarily need anything when we look at it, handouts from this government or any government that thereof. So as such, you have to adapt to that people. And Jamaica has one of the largest youthful population, neighbor. So you have to target them. And the truth is, I can point out one of the major problems with the opposition party right now. And I'm going to use word for word one of their current member of parliament, right? And I'm going to read it. I'm going to give you one guess, neighbor, and you tell me it's who. It says, a man who planning funeral cannot plan the future for the youths. And if you want a hint, I can give you a hint, neighbor.
Yes, give me a hint.
And the only rasta over the opposition side.
A man with a planning funeral.
That was his words. right?
Yes.
That was Damon Crawford's words, and it come back to bite them because it is shown as well. That is also one of the reasons why Jamaica and youthful persons are also rejecting the People's National Party. It's not just the image that they have. It's not just the overall devastating past in itself, what it has done to Jamaica, but they still also reflect that same thing. And it doesn't evoke in terms of trust for the people. Because remember, we're seeing a lot of persons now, and you hear me call them pre-independence babies. They still mirror that image. And it was those set of persons who actually were the decision makers. In fact, I believe the name of an article, I think it was, ironically, it was 2016 as well, by the Gleaner. I think it's turned off and tuned out, Jamaican youths opting out for political process. Now, that is exactly what is happening now. The 2016 is when they actually got involved. They saw a fresh face. They saw a youthful face. They saw a level of hope. They saw somebody of their own self or close to. And the People's National Party have not moved away from that. Even as much, when you look at it, neighbor, they're saying one thing but doing another. So they have a very hard task at hand. In fact, they've not necessarily integrated any policies or any suggestions regarding the people that they should be targeting. The Jamaica Labour Party, however, has been doing so, right? They themselves may rack up even more youthful votes. And here's why I say this, and get more youthful persons to participate. There is a change that is happening, a handover of the guard in the middle of a preparation. And we're seeing, when you look in terms of the parliament, it is more youthful than ever for the Jamaica Labour Party. I believe, Scratchy can correct me if I'm wrong, 10 or 11 persons who will be going out, stalwarts that will be leaving probably before the next election. And as such, these persons represent new ideas. They represent modern ideas. They represent the voice of the persons who actually was ostracized out of the governance process, right? No, you can't beat that, neighbor. When somebody represents who you are, they echo your voices. They attack any concern you have to get it fixed, while the alternative is still governing for just 401,913 people. You will continue to ensure that there is continuity with the administration that is currently there. And the opposition seems to be missing that and it's not being hidden. They seem to be missing the message big time. And as such, how they even governing or want to govern, neighbor, does not sit well with the populace that you need to cross the line for 2030. Now, that in itself, neighbor, is a cause for concern, because when you look at the democratic process, you wonder what will happen as this continues, because it, make no mistake, it doesn't show any sign. The trajectory for the People's National Party currently, while they may have, quote unquote, looking more youthful faces, it is the same old rhetoric. It is the same politicking. It is the same ideology that has been practiced by the then 50-year-olds, right? Which was their predecessors. Now, you may look it, but you don't speak it. And what this generation is looking for, neighbor, is action and not a bag of words. And what we're seeing is really more words than anything else. And it doesn't sit well. It doesn't bode well for me. I know it doesn't bode well for this generation. And the truth is, governance for persons within this era, neighbor, gets harder. Doesn't get easier. Not because, we bring down crime, love it. Not because, more jobs are available, but because it shifts from a survival mode to where this generation is the most independent one in any human history. This is the era where it challenges system frameworks, it challenges governance framework, it challenges how you look in the future. Because one of the hardest things is to persuade, neighbor, somebody who has found independence and a level of freedom far from the political process. You want them to partake and to be a part of it and to be a part of decision making. It is very hard because it is not that you can offer them anything like they did in the past to control and so on. There's a different level of revolution that is there. And that is a challenge, and it's a challenge put to the current government. They seem to understand it. They're looking to handle it as well. When we look at how they structure their policies, when we look at how they look to the future, right? That is how you govern for a generation like this. This is how you get people and your nation to buy into selecting the best possible candidates and the best possible administration going forward.
Fantastic, Harry. Scratchy?
Good night, Protecting, Caroline, neighbor, Patrick, all the viewers and everyone. Big up and enough love and
Hi,
respect.
Scratchy. Good night.
Yes, Scratchy. As I deepen this discussion about the dominant party risk analysis, you Scratchy, I'd like you to tell us the 18 and a half years that the PNP was dominant for. It was not because, Scratchy, they were doing so well. It really was about the inefficiencies or the inadequacies in the Jamaica Labour Party. Is that not correct? That there were the opposition never got itself together.
That has a lot to do with it. Plus a lot of other things, anomalies that was going out the election. But yes, to take on your point, yes, the Jamaica Labour Party were to be blamed as well. There were a lot of things that wasn't right in the party at the time.
Yes, but when you contrast that to now, this dominance of the Jamaica Labour Party, what do you attribute it to?
I mean, neighbor, what I attribute it to, first thing, neighbor, we talk about democracy, neighbor, we have to understand, neighbor, and put it in context that you cannot have, and before I say that, neighbor, I'm going to say that I don't think democracy, neighbor, is solely linked to performance. It doesn't matter if you're a performer or not. That doesn't mean that there's not a democracy. I think democracy is just a process, the fact that we have an election every 5 years and persons go out and vote. And what I want to say, neighbor, to the viewers and everyone to understand, neighbor, is that you cannot, neighbor, have a good opposition. If you have a good opposition, you're going to have a poor government. And if you have a good government, you're going to have a poor opposition. That is just the reality of politics and how it is. The opposition cannot be good if the government is performing. And the opposition, that is just the reality, neighbor, of how politics is. So the reason why we're seeing this type of opposition...
Explore that a little bit more. It's interesting.
All right. If the government is doing good, neighbor, there is no way you can have a good opposition if the government is doing good. If the government is performing, there's no way the opposition can be good. The only way an opposition party can be good, neighbor, is if the government is lacking and not performing. That is the only way you can have a good opposition. So to say that, neighbor,
in other words, the opposition's advancement depends on the government underperforming.
Underperforming, neighbor, because we have to understand, in the neighbor, people don't vote in opposition, in the neighbor. People vote out government. People don't vote in. People don't go to polls and say we're going to vote for the opposition. People go to polls and say we're going to vote out the government.
Yes.
So if the government,
in other words, they want the party coming in to correct the mistakes that the government has made.
Exactly. So they want to get rid of government. They don't necessarily go in. They might not even necessarily be in support of the opposition either, but they just want to get rid of this government because they have some form of growth or vexation with the government. So
yes, and you're saying that right now exists in Jamaica. There is not that dissatisfaction among the electorate that they would vote in the opposition. But there's something I want you to consider, Scratchy, that even if it were so, because there is some dissatisfaction in Jamaica, but the opposition is not able to message to them. You don't see that?
All right, the reason why, neighbor, the opposition, neighbor, if you look at this opposition, neighbor, if you look at the People's National Party, neighbor, going back to the 18 years, neighbor, all I can say, I can tell it, I can describe the PNP. The PNP is poverty, neighbor. The PNP is unemployment. The PNP is low wages. The PNP is bad roads. The PNP is crime and violence. So when you look at Jamaica now from the 18 years compared to now, neighbor, you have a reduction in poverty. You have a reduction in crime and violence. You have a reduction in unemployment. We have an increase in minimum wage. So you find that once the government continue to meet these benchmarks, neighbor, the PNP is going to become redundant because these are things that the PNP is known for. The PNP is not known for high employment. They're not known for low poverty rate. They're not known for low crime rate and stuff like that. So you're going to find the opposition are going to always be irrelevant, neighbor, despite the government not being perfect, and the government might make a little few mishaps here and there, neighbor. But persons are saying to themselves, are these mistakes that being made by the government tantamount to voting against the government, or does it reach a level where I am sad with this government and I don't want to have nothing to do with this government? It still doesn't reach that threshold yet. It still doesn't reach that threshold to
yes.
vex and get rid of the
You mean the dissatisfaction that exists?
Yes.
It's not at the threshold that they blame government.
Yes, it's not at the threshold where you say you're going to literally get rid of a government for this, because there are certain things, neighbor, as I say, it always comes down to people personal living. And we have definitely seen, neighbor, where we have seen a reduction in crime. We have definitely seen a reduction in unemployment. We have definitely seen a reduction in poverty. And we have definitely seen things happening, neighbor. And again, we have tangible things in Jamaica. Back in the 18 years, neighbor, the PNP, there's nothing tangible that we could see and say, all right, development is going across the length and breadth of Jamaica, even if I'm not sure what is going on based on the terms and the terminology that being used by these politicians, but I can look out my own two eyes and see that there are things that are improving around me. That wasn't the case in the 90s, neighbor. In the 90s, it wasn't like that. Compared to now, neighbor, persons can compare their life now and compare their life back to the 90s and say, I am definitely seeing improvement, neighbor. Persons are able now to have their own room for their kids, neighbor. Persons are able now to add on a kitchen. One time, Jamaica was known for outside bathroom and outside kitchen. Persons can say, all right, we can add on a kitchen on the house, we can add on a bathroom on the house. So persons, neighbor, are living it, neighbor, and they are seeing it. When you look at the road infrastructure across the length and breadth of the country, neighbor, people drive, we see it, people see the new roads, people see the road condition, people say, yeah, they are seeing improvement. The time when you take a move from point A to point B, people are seeing these things, neighbor, and people are appreciative of these things. When you look at the National Health Fund, they know the type of medication that is now covered under the National Health Fund for our seniors and persons like that, neighbor. All of us have grandparents and granduncles and stuff like that, neighbor. We are seeing things, and these are things, neighbor, that we couldn't see these things in the 90s. Under the 18 years of PNP rule the country for, neighbor, we couldn't see these things. We had high unemployment, neighbor. We had high poverty. We had high crime. There's a lot of things, neighbor, these are things that kind of put the country at a certain level, neighbor, where it was difficult for us to reach our true potential, neighbor. And when persons can match the 18 years, neighbor, compared to these 10 years, persons' life had advanced, neighbor, from 2016 to now. And I said before, and I say it again, anyone in Jamaica, neighbor, who can come on any platform or go around anywhere in Jamaica and blame this government and say that government not doing nothing for them, neighbor. They are worthless, neighbor. They are worthless. They are worthless. They are not. Neighbor, government alone cannot do it, Government set policies, government set programs, and government put things in place for the advancement of citizens. It's up to us as citizens to take advantage of these policies and these programs that government bring across. And I can say, neighbor, Archers NTA offer more program now than ever in the history of Archers NTA. Anything at all you want to be, Archers NTA offer it. When you look at even the part program, PNP might say it's film program, but the real advancement, neighbor, the real targeting of the most vulnerable, neighbor, has happened through the government, and the government target these persons who really need this help. Jamaica see the biggest social programs right now. We have never seen this much money being spent on social programs. When you look at our seniors, neighbor, and in the 90s, neighbor, someone who's a senior who might be classed as our most vulnerable, neighbor, these persons could be as simple as even senile persons at one point, neighbor, based on how these persons carry themselves, neighbor, because government itself, neighbor, didn't have anything in place for our seniors, neighbor. Seniors were just living, and just living. If they didn't have any family member to take care of them certain way, neighbor, these seniors look certain. No, we have seniors who are part of the part program. We have pension program now for seniors who have never worked a day in them life and contribute to any pension program, but they can still get a social pension. So when you look at all of the sectors, neighbor, the most vulnerable sectors across our society, neighbor, when you look at even CXC, right now government is paying for more subjects than ever for our students based on the type of subjects that you are doing in schools. So these are compared to the 90s, neighbor, for that 18 years that the PNP rule, neighbor, compared to this 10 years that Andrew Michael Lawrence has been in government. We can safely say, neighbor, that we have definitely seen improvement, neighbor, not just in the infrastructure of the country, but also in persons' personal life. And anyone who, neighbor, will continue to go around and spew rhetoric and say that the government not doing nothing, neighbor, these are persons who benefited personally when time the PNP was in power. Because when the PNP is in power, whenever the People's National Party is in power, neighbor, things are not done on a national level, neighbor. It's not done, like you say, like the government launched a Spark program and all 63 constituencies benefited from it, neighbor. There's nothing where we can look back on and say PNP launched, neighbor, that benefited Jamaica and a whole. All 63 constituencies benefited from our 60 at the time. There's no program that was launched under that 18.5 years. When you look at the water projects, neighbor, when you look at increase in minimum wage and stuff like that, if you look at all the minimum wage increase from 1989 to 2007 while the PNP was in power, it's minimal. That's about $100 a year, over every year, you know? So it's just to say, neighbor, that the Jamaica Labour Party, neighbor, is a political organization, neighbor. As I always say, neighbor, they are not just only caring, because the PNP thought themselves as being caring, but the difference between the PNP and the JLP, neighbor, is that the PNP is caring. Yes, they say that they are caring, but they are not sharing. Jamaica Labour Party is caring and sharing, neighbor. They don't, the Jamaica Party care for you, and they also share. Whatever spoils the country benefit from, neighbor, it is shared, neighbor, right across the length and breadth of Jamaica. Every single sector. What every time we had an increase in public sector wages, neighbor, every single sector benefited. We had an increase in minimum wage as well to back it up for persons who are at the lower level, neighbor. Politicians, government workers, all of those persons got an increase, neighbor. Fire workers, every single person got an increase, neighbor. It wasn't just done on a one branch level, neighbor. If you look at all the government target, even its budget, neighbor, whenever the government come with a budget and whatever is give back, neighbor, a majority of our society can see that they have benefited, neighbor, in some way, shape, or form. It's either they don't get it directly, but they get it indirectly. Now, persons who follow the PNP, neighbor, and who believe in the People's National Party, they are not used to this type of governance structure. They are not used to me and you and everybody benefiting. They are used to them alone getting something in a brown envelope, and they look at me and laugh at me and say, because we're on a PNP, we're not getting nothing. When time is a government that should look out for the benefit of the whole country. So PNP, they are not nationalist, neighbor. They don't, when it comes to national church or a national project, they are not nationalist, neighbor. They are just a political organization, neighbor, that only looks out for the people who support their political organization, neighbor. And I think Jamaicans, neighbor, has reached to that level where we don't want to see that type of politics no more. We don't want to vote for a political organization, neighbor, that even when they form the government, all they can see is the political organization that you support. We don't want to vote for those persons, neighbor. Definitely don't want that.
Okay. No, I know you are quite able of doing this strategy. When you look at the politics today, when you look at the economic credibility of the government, the leadership stability of Andrew Holness and the weakness of the opposition, when you look at the things the government is associated with, debt reduction, low unemployment, fiscal discipline, reduction in crime, these are policies, Scratchy, that strengthens Jamaica's reputation, and it is associated with the Jamaica Labour Party brand. And as a result of that, the party gains long-term trust. Is it that the PNP is so bad, or is it that the Jamaica Labour Party is so good that they are just benefiting from the stability, from the leadership, but the stability the country is experiencing?
Neighbor, I would definitely say, neighbor, that the Jamaica Labour Party is definitely good, neighbor, because I am not going to just tout it and say it is just because the PNP is bad, neighbor. Yes, we know the PNP is bad, neighbor, but despite the PNP being bad, neighbor, the Jamaica Labour Party could have also been bad. You know, it's not because the PNP being bad why the government, why everything that they talk about is happening. It's not because the PNP is bad why we have low crime right now. It's not because the PNP is bad why we have low unemployment, why we have low poverty. These are because of the good performance and the good strategy and creativity of the Jamaica Labour Party. If it wasn't for the Jamaica Labour Party led by Andrew Michael Holness, neighbor, we still wouldn't reach this benchmark. So I must say, neighbor, that we have to give credit to this government, neighbor. If you look across the cabinet, I told you I am not one neighbor who come and tout and talk about this is the best performing minister or that is the best performing minister, neighbor. If you look at this cabinet, neighbor, and I always try to tell people, say, look at the Jamaica Labour Party cabinet that we have in place and match it to any other cabinet. We don't want to match it with Portia Simpson Miller cabinet. We don't want to match it with a Bruce Golding cabinet. We don't want to match it with a PJ Patterson cabinet, neighbor. No other cabinet, neighbor, is matched to this cabinet, neighbor. This cabinet is a cabinet, neighbor, where persons there understand, neighbor, where the country needs to go. They understand where the world is going in terms of technological advance, neighbor. Persons in the cabinet understand that, neighbor. We have persons in the cabinet with experience who was there from in the 70s, neighbor, and the 80s, neighbor, and understand what Jamaica was like. And we have a young prime minister, neighbor, our first post-independent prime minister, the youngest prime minister the country has ever seen, who understand what it is, neighbor, understand the reality of what majority of Jamaicans are living and majority of Jamaicans are facing. If you look at the opposition benches now, neighbor, look at the 28 members over there. I'm not going to stay here and say, when you look at the PNP, neighbor, the PNP was an organization, neighbor, whether I want to believe it or not. These PNP was an organization, neighbor, that brands themselves on academias, lawyers, teachers, and those type of persons. When you look at a PJ Party's cabinet, when you look at these persons right now, neighbor, look at the 28 members who are a part of this right now and say, which one of these guys could really be a part of PJ Party's cabinet? As bad as Michael Manley was, look at Michael Manley cabinet. Which one of these PNP, neighbor, could be a part of a Michael Manley cabinet? So it is safe, neighbor, to say that this cohort of PNP, neighbor, they are the worst. This is the worst of PNP, neighbor, the worst. These guys are political nincompoop. They are not politically savvy, neighbor. They are not patriotic Jamaicans, neighbor. They only can see their best interests. Yeah, we have some young politicians, neighbor, who offer themselves for political representation and look like even before offering themselves for political representation, neighbor, these persons didn't praise themselves of how the political system work or how the parliamentary system work. I mean, these guys still come to parliament, neighbor. They don't understand how the standing orders work, neighbor. They ask questions or try to make statements whenever they should do the other one. So it goes to show, neighbor, that this political organization, the People's National Party, neighbor, they are the biggest problem right now to Jamaica right now. The PNP is Jamaica's biggest problem because they have a set of persons over there. They have 28 nincompoops over there, neighbor. 28 unprofessional persons, neighbor. If this thing was a thing where you have to bring up your resume for you to get the salary that you're earning, a lot of these guys would never qualify for this job, neighbor. If it wasn't just based on representation alone and being voted in by people, they wouldn't qualify, neighbor. And as much as we talk about democracy, yes, neighbor, I understand the vital role that opposition play in our democracy because they play a part of our governance system and our governance structure. Now, when you have an opposition, neighbor, where we make it very difficult, neighbor, Jamaica is suffering because of the PNP. Because let me tell you what now. A lot of the problem that Jamaica, right now we have a problem with the taxi, because I have a serious problem with Jamaica and the unruliness of the taxi operators. Now, if the Jamaica government, neighbor, should right now go in and say that they're going to regulate the taxi sector, neighbor, and try to get these taxi men in order, neighbor, the PNP will come out in defense of the taxi man, them. They're going to come out. So it's like they're defeating what the government is trying to do. When in truth and in fact, neighbor, the transportation system with these taxi men, it really needs regularization. It needs some form of formality. It needs some form of fix-up. But PNP is going to back them. When you look at crime and violence, 2010, neighbor, when time the government finally had a war on crime and violence, neighbor, when time Andrew Holness as leader of government business stand in the parliament and asked the opposition at the time, neighbor, to say stand in solidarity with us. Let us vote and for to enhance or to further the state of emergency so that we can go after the criminals, because right now we have criminals on their back foot. The PNP didn't do it, neighbor. The PNP back them. We look at something like NIDS. That needs, neighbor, national identification system. Every first world country in the world where you go, neighbor, have a national identification system. So all of us who that Jamaica will fight against this. If you come to Canada, you have to have it. You go to America, you have to take it. England, you have to have it. No, when you look at the government, neighbor, trying to bring forth something like that, neighbor, PNP tell people, say, government to go take on the data, government to go take your fingerprint, government to go do this, government to go do that, just to spew the water, neighbor, because the PNP know, neighbor, that as long as Jamaica continue to grow, neighbor, they cannot see back government, neighbor. The PNP's poverty, the PNP's high unemployment, neighbor, the PNP's overall destruction, neighbor. Once Jamaica is developed, the PNP is going to continue to become irrelevant. Once persons want to continue to have the increase in persons illiteracy level in Jamaica, PNP is going to become irrelevant, neighbor. Once Jamaica come to continue to strive in terms of technological advance, neighbor, and persons have the ability to go on internet and search and get information, PNP is going to become irrelevant, neighbor. Once we continue to fix the roads, them, neighbor, and give people water and improve people living condition, PNP is going to become irrelevant, neighbor. Because if you look across the length and breadth of Jamaica, neighbor, PNP is known to putting people in poverty. PNP is known to keeping people in poverty. PNP is known to bring it down pan gully bank, billows, gap and gully bank with board and zinc. That is what PNP is known for, neighbor, because PNP believe is to keep people poor, keep them in a poverty, neighbor, make them don't have any form of information so that we can continue to strive and use these people and prey on these people inability to can think freely and know what is what, neighbor. As long as Jamaica continue to advance and as long as Jamaica continue to grow, you're going to see the PNP becoming more irrelevant than ever. And my biggest thing to show you how irrelevant the PNP is, don't take me for it, neighbor. Look at the 28 members of parliament who the PNP have. Neighbor, one time gone, these people could never make the PNP benches. And look at the bench of the PNP right now. Look at the bench of the PNP. I am worried. Neighbor. I am not worried. I am definitely worried, neighbor, because these people, neighbor, when I look at the people who are in my parliament right now, these people should look still in the parliament, neighbor. These people should PNP have 28 council over there, neighbor, about them a member of parliament. 28 council over that. Local government, them people have gone.
So what you are saying, dear Scratch, is that if Jamaica advances, the PNP will be really come a set of people that go to the museum. And you don't see Jamaica failing?
I don't see Jamaica failing right now, and this Jamaica Labour Party government, neighbor. The programs and the policies that have been installed by this government, neighbor, programs and policies, neighbor, that the country should have gone through from the 90s and that 18.5 years, neighbor. A lot of things that the government is doing now, neighbor, things that should have been done. Why are we still refurbishing police station in 2026, 2025?
Yeah.
Why are we still giving people water in 2026, 2025? Why are we still doing those things? Those are things that we should have moved on from, and those monies.
Why do we have Cuban doctors?
Why we have Cuban doctors after 50 years? 50 years. What kind of medical program where we Cuban doctors in 50 years, neighbor? But these are all things because these things are born. The Cuban program, neighbor, was born out of PNP. It was born out of, neighbor, every single thing that has to do with the destruction of Jamaica, neighbor, was born out of the People's National Party. Every single part of our sector right now that is failing, neighbor, is a child of the People's National Party. And I'm going to tell you again, neighbor, PNP is poverty, PNP is high unemployment, PNP is high crime and violence, PNP is destruction. PNP is the biggest problem to Jamaica growth and development right now. The People's National Party will look on. The biggest problem to Jamaica growth and development, but they don't want to see us grow, they don't want to see us strive, because these guys, they only look at individual, they only look at themselves on an individual. Neighbor, all who benefit from PNP, the reason why they want PNP in power, they're not going to say, you want PNP in power, because when time PNP in power, Jamaica all right and Jamaica look good. They're going to say, we want PNP in power because when time PNP in power, me make money. It's all about I when it comes to PNP. It's not about we. The Jamaica Labour Party is all about the advancements and the developments of Jamaica. If two persons alone make it, neighbor, Jamaica can't strive. Jamaica can only strive, neighbor, majority of the country make it. And we have to understand that, and we have to know that, neighbor, and call out PNP. PNP is destruction, neighbor. PNP is poverty, neighbor. PNP is responsible for majority of our illness we are facing right now. Majority of the sickness we are facing right now, PNP give it.
Listeners, could you please continue to tap the screen and share the live? And also, please continue to repost the live.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh.
18 minutes to 10 o'clock.
It's a candy place. Oh God. Oh God.
16 minutes to go to 10 o'clock. Yes, we have to go on with this until 10 o'clock. Patrick Booty. Hello, Patrick. Patrick, hello, Patrick.
Patrick, could you please unmute your mic, please? Please unmute your mic, Patrick.
All right, Patrick. No, he's not here. Yeah, let me jump back up to you, protecting, and come back to that. All right. Quarter to 10, quarter to 11 in Florida. All right. So Jamaica, protecting. Hi. Protecting Jamaica. Hi. All right. So he is gone. He is gone. All right. So Harry, the point I am wanting to make is that Jamaica might be entering its first modern, what I call performance democracy. Democracy, as we know it, Harry, is where, you know, people tend to change from one party to the other. But I get the sense that we are now in a period that I want to call performance democracy, where the politics is not driven by ideological identity, classism, and strong party loyalty. But today it appears to be shifting towards performance-based voting. Would you comment on that, Harry, in the context of listening to Julian Robinson? You never got any ideological difference coming out of that party, correct?
No, neighbor. In fact, and you know, I'm not somebody to really beat any representative and any person from either political parties. I just call it for what it is.
Yes.
But what I've found, neighbor, is that it shows a level of laziness from that presentation.
I agree.
And here's why. Because fortunately for us and the listeners, unfortunately for them, the two recommendations that he ran with as the headlines fall into fields that I'm very much aware of, right?
Yes.
One I would have studied for 3 years, which is my expertise, and the other one in which I spent 5 years currently. And because it's so familiar to me, I went ahead, because I no longer have my old literature, I went ahead and just did a simple Google search, neighbor. Both those, almost verbatim, right, were AI generated.
Hold on.
And
hold on. You are saying to me that Robinson, 2 of his proposals came from AI?
Yes, neighbor. In fact, the Nomad one, the very example that was used was verbatim in terms of the Barbados, right? And the when it comes on to the electronic change, when it comes down to the tax administration of Jamaica, neighbor, that is something, if you look up, let me give you the exact terminology. We'll call them SIDS in tourism, right? Let me see if I can find it quickly. But these are SIDS countries, meaning they're small developing states. Let me just find it real quickly so I can get the listeners. So they're called small island developing states, right? And it is exactly, almost word for word, that was the first suggestion. If you type in how to improve political process in the financial sector for small developing states, you will see it come up, neighbor. You will see the AI version first, and if you click it and look, you will see it as number 1 or number 2 recommendation. So it's pure laziness, and it's sad because, you know,
but that is sad.
And there wasn't well researched in terms of, they just came and give some references, countries that are not applicable, not because they're close to the Caribbean region mean they're applicable. So it's laziness, neighbor. Had they come with and said, okay, you know, where we are now, this is how we could do it. But when you're going to say we can get $8 billion from it, Damian Crawford knows that the maths now matter, which is why he was silent when Julian was talking, neighbor. right? And the biggest cheerleader was the opposition leader at the time. Again, Scratchy pointed out, the opposition leader probably have wrote the statement, the speech, because he knew it word for word. Neighbor, if I'm doing a presentation, my manager don't know it word for word, right? And it shows that in its capacity, it's nothing that is to drive Jamaica forward. No, because understand this, and listeners understand, that budget reading that was given by Minister Favour is not one that is for 10 years down the road. We knew what happened with Melissa, right? We knew what it did to Jamaica. And as such, this is a budget to bring us across the next 2 years, because the rest of the plans would have already been set in motion to advance economically and infrastructural wise. That is how you drive growth. But don't come as an opposition and come with something that will cost us more before it ever be able to implement. I can guarantee you, neighbor, the electronic one, it would take us after 2030 election to get that implemented. And that makes no sense. It is just saying things for
in other words, the revenue measures are not correct. They can't be implemented for this year at all.
Neighbor, not even for the next 2-3 years. And that is just being honest.
That's my information.
It is, because when you look at it, neighbor, we know our tax TAJ is not the best. We know we're still very much manual. We know we're nowhere close to where we ought to have been, and we know what caused it. But when you're looking at a current situation and you're going to come with a budget plan that is something looking almost 10 years down the road, then you're taking Jamaican people for a fool. And for me, neighbor, who can see right through it, it doesn't sit well. And as such, I have to present it as it is. I have to call it out as it is, no matter how I feel about it, no matter how lenient I may want to be, because I believe they should get some level of chance to not oppose, but give us sensible alternative. And again, this is an area that they dropped the ball. And I've been pointing out for the last 5 months, every single time they've dropped the ball. And as such, you can't trust them in this manner, right? And I classify it as lazy. It doesn't give stability. In fact, it gives unsurety in 2 ways. It is unsure as to how you'd want to apply this, so it's not applicable to Jamaica. And lazy in terms of you couldn't understand the problem that Jamaica is having and find something that is close to home to let the people say.
Absolutely. Because to be fair, Harry, and this is no criticism of the government, but Jamaica in its developmental path does have problems to deal with. Am I not correct?
We do, neighbor.
Yes.
In fact, and I said it, Melissa would have thankfully, and I've been saying it, I'm thankful for Melissa, but I wish it wasn't a Melissa that caused this, because we're going to see a systematic change, things that should have been done away with. The Prime Minister speak about one, the procurement processes and policies that we have was for a time in which you couldn't trust even the government at the time, right? We're no longer in that era anymore. Things should be a little bit more open. But of course, accountability, integrity, and all that is still within the framework. And as such, we have to move away. Case in point, the 1,000 cameras that we got for the police officers, right? We should have actually gotten it in 2024. What caused the problem? Procurement. When they wanted to use a part of the procurement, the commission at the time, to fast track it, they said, no, you can't use that. And we had to wait over a year before we could have get those cameras. And those are critical to our thing. In fact, we probably would have been seeing trust in the police system a lot more, in the judicial system a lot faster, right? That is slowly building. And also we could have easily improved the technology a year before. In fact, that could have also driven down our numbers. We may have even been below 600 if we got those before, and other technological advancement. So when we look at these things, neighbor, there's a lot of areas you can improve. You don't have to revolutionize everything, especially when a government is doing good by the people. What you do is find how to improve processes that are there, and people will start to they won't accept you right away because the opposition still opened wounds from the past, and you have to understand you don't build trust like that. It takes a while, but at least they would put in down strokes. Maybe when you go to school and you write the 1 stroke and then you cross it when you reach 5. At least person mentally would have been say, okay, I remember Julian suggested this, it's an improvement. And even the opposition, the administration would have taken process improvement on anything that they've done. That is how you become viable. That is how you become an option again. That is how you take the steps to become considered by the people of Jamaica, which they've done great harm to, right?
Yeah. But what does it say about an opposition that comes to a parliament with an AI generated, well, at least segments of the speech you are suggesting? It is embarrassing.
No, but I don't think they thought persons would have actually found out and pointed out, because not many persons would have known, right? Sadly for them, I'm in the space now, and as such, I will not sit on that information and leave my Jamaican people ignorant, those locally and in the diaspora. Especially diaspora, because they are the ones who rely on us to give them the real deal as to what's happening in Jamaica. And the opposition had the opportunity, neighbor. That is what hurts.
God.
You've been given the opportunity by our system. The democratic process allows you to come up and speak and give your view and whatever. And you keep blundering and you are weakening yourself more and more. Now, being lazy, because they can be lazy and be good neighbor. In fact, the best of institutions work well when you are lazy in terms of how you implement things. Let you seem lazy, but you're effective, right? People will look and say, if you do something manual, for example, let's use the tax office. We know it's manual. Rather than you going ahead now to try and, input everything when the person is there, you go online. That is really becoming lazy, but you're effective. You're impactful. There's an impact there that makes things easier. But don't come as an opposition neighbor and do a half-hearted job. They're more beating off desk in that presentation than anything else. It's almost like they're trying to build a vibes, and vibes don't get you anywhere when they're trying to become the next government. Like,
yes.
That's part of politics. Because growing up, neighbor, I used to hear deska beat in a parliament regular. Like, I can never ever see parliament and I don't hear deska beat. Now in parliament, neighbor, just the opposition alone here beat down desk. And it's never for anything that is advancing Jamaica. It is always a jab. It is always a smart comment. No, neighbor, will be on those times. You're dealing with people now who have access to information. People who once they set their mind to try and understand what you have put forward, they will find the cracks in it and they will expose you as such. The social media space is unforgiving. We've always said
unforgiving. Oh, so true. So true.
And as such, neighbor, I was speaking earlier to a very good friend of mine, because I heard a clip from Dr. Alfred Dawes, and I'm going to say Dr. Alfred Dawes. I'm leaving the doctor there for a reason. And sadly for him, I watched the Standing Finance Committee in which he asked Christopher Tufton good questions, specifically regarding the Cuban situation. And we know he tried to mislead the people, saying the Cuban is no longer with us, which is something is very frequent with the People's National Party. But I digress that. But he was asked on a program, neighbor, what did he think the government in terms of a contingency plan when the Cubans leave? And Dr. Alfred Dawes blatantly lied, and I'm going to get the recording and send it. Blatantly lied, said he doesn't know. Neighbor, in the standing committee, and I watched the standing committee twice for Christopher Tufton, because I know they beat health, right? The Ministry of Health. And Christopher Tufton spoke explicitly, clearly, right? Exactly how they would fill any shortfalls that are there. In fact, we have a system where we move around medical practitioners when we have any influx, because certain time of the year there's an influx, right? And also they move around. Other times in the year, you can do without a lot of the practitioners in a specific hospital or specific region. So that was one that came internally, something we practice regular. The other was that we have MOUs with China, Philippines. We're getting the surplus of specialists from Ghana, Nigeria. Neighbor, that was the answer. Go ahead, Caroline.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I noticed that the listeners are typing F1. Is it that they're not hearing us? Could you tell us if you're hearing us? I'm not sure why they're typing F1. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Harry.
That's all right, Caroline. As Minister Moderation and Mediation, you can.
Yes. Thank you. Listeners, let us know if you're hearing us. Okay, go ahead, Harry.
Right. So when you look at that, neighbor, this is a doctor first, right? You sworn an oath, not just to your patient's neighbor, but when you're a doctor and you end up in politics, you definitely should be statesman-like, right? You have to put the truth to the people, and you blatantly lied on a program having gotten full clarity. It couldn't be clearer, neighbor. I couldn't ask Christopher Tufton to explain it further, because he went further and explained what they're doing. And I can tell you, Alfred Dawes' response was okay. He said okay when Christopher Tufton laid it out, right? And you're going to come on another program to act as if none of that happened to people who may not have had the luxury to listen to the finance committee. But you can't expect to be chosen by this generation, by people who are understanding what is happening, right? And come and lie like that.
By the way, Harry, you know that I don't know if the party is listening to this program, but we did something here last night that I see the Prime Minister is doing on his page tonight. Yes, sir. We played the Prime Minister's budget presentation 3 years ago as a context, and listen to this. This is coming straight from the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has picked it up.
You see the magnitude of the scale of FinSAC relative to the size of our economy. We didn't seek the root of our problems today. It is the bad policies of the PNP in the 1990s. If you want to know what is the root of our problems today, it is the bad policies of the PNP in the
No, we that last night.
Definitely, neighbor.
I tell you, boy, the podcast gonna lead. This is on the Prime Minister's page. Listen to
1990s.
If we're going to have a history lesson, we must just do it honestly.
FinSAC was a homegrown domestic crisis wholly caused by the PNP, for which we are now only just recovering.
I tell you, the Labour Party is improving. Congrats.
Our debt to GDP prior to the advent of the FinSAC crisis was 72%. The government at the time established FinSAC to bail out the collapsed financial.
Let me take a break and go ahead, Harry. I'm gonna see if I can bring this up on screen and show the listeners what is happening.
Yes, neighbor, because the truth is, and for those who weren't here when we covered it, I would have said, yes, neighbor, I smiled because I knew what the opposition finance minister opened, and is a door he should have kept shut.
Yes.
I laughed. I was at work listening, And I stopped because I thought I misheard. But when I doubled down, you should have never touched that period. Especially, and I tell you, neighbor, it's unfortunate for them that somebody like me, who is well read and well researched, just happen to know these things and have the evidence behind it.
Yes,
right?
Why I tell you, you're knocking them hard, man.
You're taking credit for a period that gave up our sovereignty. You attacked a period, which is 07 to 11, where we tried to create a new framework in a dire time. The world's greatest recession in 100 years. Months later, we had a hurricane. So we weren't moving anywhere. We had nowhere to go. And we all know the saying, America sneeze, we catch a cold. And we caught more than a cold at that time. Because understand this, the difference between the early 2000s, and I'm going to say the early 2000s, and now with this administration, was that this administration has diversified our political relationships. Our international relationships have been the greatest and the widest it has ever been. We weren't tied to any one relationship with any country or so on. Neighbor, in fact, and I love to use the Minister of World Tourism, because that is really what Edmund Bartlett is. Neighbor, we've been signing deals to get people from Nigeria, tourists, from the Middle East. We've never tapped into the Middle East ever before, right?
Never.
Deals have been signed, right? In fact, just before the election, the minister was away in Central Asia after completing his visit to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, specifically in Doha, Qatar. He went to Singapore and a few other areas before he came for the election. That is why we're seeing our tourism product being so robust. Yes, we've been knocked about. It's time to move away from certain things. No, where your strength lies, you strengthen it even more. You get as much as you can from it while you diversify for other revenue areas to come on stream. You don't up and leave it, right? And as such, there's so many markets out there that was never thought of before. We've never expanded our horizon. And these are markets that we can take a share of, and a large share at that. So we can't leave anything on the table, neighbor. We take as much as we can. It brings us to a level of financial freedom, right? So it's not just the individual to be financial free, but a nation in itself have so many relationships, and very good relationships too. Hence why we are doing this delicate dance in this geopolitical time, because you have to read the room. And the room is the world, is the globe. There's no one thing you can take any one side to and call it a day. We're beyond that. And remember, we paid for it when our government took that firm stance, uninformed and ignorant as to where the world was going. Because when you have as much information as this current administration does, neighbor, and that is where the technocrats comes in, that is where the private sector comes in. Because if you ask the private sector now, neighbor, in which time and which government have they had good dialogue, good agreement, and good relationship with, where they are considered and have a seat at the table? They'll only tell you this administration. Because we've never seen the PSOJ this close before. In fact, the Senate have a former PSOJ head, which was Keith Duncan. We've not seen that, and you have to look at Andrew Holness's recruitment, and we've pointed it out. That is proper recruitment. That is a man who, it doesn't matter what side of the table he is. If it's for Jamaica to advance and for the people to be better, he will. And Andrew Holness could have seen that for years and did a years of recruitment. Because I know he was being recruited for quite a number of years now before he made the decision. And that is how you build Jamaica forward. That is, in fact, let's use the opposition's thing for this debate. Fix the now, build for the future. Is the last part right, neighbor?
Yes, fix in the now, build in the future.
Right. So this is a time now where you need your financial sector to be able to activate accessibility and availability for the rebuilding of Jamaica. That is the area that will drive Jamaica forward. Because guess what, neighbor? Nobody can disagree with it. Here's why. It was the financial sector that got us here. It was a crippling and almost the annihilation of the financial sector in the 90s that put Jamaica where we are now. And as such, it is the same sector that will drive us forward. Any country, if your financial sector is rigid and doesn't inspire growth, neighbor, you aren't moving anywhere. This is a game of numbers. This is a game of where your relation lies, where your networking lies. And I don't see the opposition currently in their team have that network. I really can't. Gone are the days, neighbor. I could say, all right, I look at it, and you could see Percival go out and speak. He could build a network. But I look at the opposition now, and I don't see who I would actually send to represent Jamaica if I'm, for example, send them to East Asia, send them to China, send them to the Middle East, right? Send them to Africa. I really don't see somebody who will hold their own and represent Jamaica without being one-sided or being ill-informed or ignorant on the process. Neighbor, we are tapping because of our technocrats and learning from them and involving them in the process at the highest level. Globally, right? We're recruiting from the diaspora. Very good. Because these persons have experiences. And this is one of the things how you pivot. Specifically from the diaspora, for years we've relied on just remittances. Their value lies in their lived experiences, the skill sets they've earned, the skills that they've learned. That is where the true value lies. So when they come back home and they impart that, that's how you empower your very people. It's not just the dollars. It has to make sense, and no pun intended as well, right? You go where the human resource, which is our oil. And that is our oil. It doesn't matter what anybody wants, a neighbor. Jamaica's human resources, tapping into it, building it, giving it a firm foundation. In fact, neighbor, that is a resource that needs more guardrail than anything else. You have to put it in place where whatever is done, there's irreversible things that can happen to it. You should not be retrieving, even if this administration is not there. You should be protecting the most vulnerable.
You want to know?
And the People's National Party has failed Jamaica on that, right? We've played clips regarding Edward Siaga when he spoke about the educational level and the literacy level of Jamaica coming out, right? There was no people to drive the high-skilled jobs. I hear, I think it's Fitz Jackson in the standing committee saying, oh, is the Chinese people them alone getting the jobs and only flagmen and flagwomen Jamaica have? Nonsense. We have engineers on these projects. We have high-end jobs where Jamaicans are. Back in the days, that was the reality. Flagman and flagwoman. Because they didn't have anything else. Those who were the technocrats had to leave Jamaica because there was nothing here for them. Right? It was a handout thing. It was a beg you a thing. It was a day's work. You can't look on an engineer who studied for 4 or 5 years, neighbor, and tell him to go be a flagman or a flagwoman. That was where we're coming from. Now we're seeing them redesigning. Now we're seeing them as part of the process. So when I hear Fitz Jackson them talking about it's just flagman and flagwoman and the percentage is low, it's nonsense. We're beyond that time, and it shows that the opposition is still living in a far time where we've moved away from. And it's a sad day in Jamaica to have an opposition like that, neighbor.
Thank you. Good evening, Donald. See? Hello? Donald? No, we don't have Donald. All right, let's listen a little bit to the Prime Minister as he responds to.
That is the root of our problems today. It is the bad policies of the PNP in the 1990s.
If we're going to have a history lesson, we must just do it honestly.
Finac was a homegrown domestic crisis wholly caused by the PNP, for which we are now only just recovering. Our debt to GDP prior to the advent of the Finac crisis was 72%. The government at the time established Finac to bail out the collapsed financial institutions. This bailout cost the country 42% of GDP. In other words, 42% of what we produce in any 1 year, we had to take it to pay for Finac. By way of comparison, the US government's bailout intervention during the global financial crisis of 2008-2009 was only 9% of their GDP. So you see the magnitude of the scale of Finac relative to the size of our economy. Within 6 years after the establishment of Finac, our debt spiraled out of control from 72% of GDP to 130% of GDP, almost doubling. That caused interest costs alone on the debt to consume almost 70% of tax revenues. So just the cost to pay for the debt, the interest at one point cost us 70% of all the tax revenues that we collect. If you add public sector wages to that and other things that you have to pay for out of tax revenue, then you basically would have no money left. You would have no money left to fix roads, no money left to build schools, no money left to repair clinics, no money left to pay for water. So if you ever wondered, if you ever wondered why we have so much infrastructure that has been left unmaintained and now falling apart, if you ever wondered.
Well, we carried that last night, and it's good to see that the PR people for the party has picked it up, and it's now being broadcast on the Prime Minister's speech. Well done, Politics Plus. Scratchy? Why, Scratchy? It is clear that the Labour Party is finding its footing when it comes on to PNP propaganda and putting them to rest as quickly as they put them out there. It is important for the Jamaican people. Scratchy.
Definitely, neighbor. It is definitely important for the Jamaica people, neighbor, to understand, neighbor, that it is the Jamaica Labour Party, neighbor, who has brought us through, neighbor, or who has rescued us, neighbor, in our toughest times, neighbor. All the Jamaica major disaster, neighbor, natural disaster. I'm not talking about man-made. All the Jamaica major natural disaster, neighbor. If you go back to Hurricane Gilbert from the 80s, neighbor, it was the Jamaica Labour Party through the leadership of Edward Seaga, neighbor, who did a remarkable job, neighbor, in the recovery of that hurricane. But sadly, Jamaicans voted him out, neighbor. Fast forward, neighbor, to 2000s, neighbor. The global recession, neighbor. Julian Robinson speak about, but I'm talking the truth, neighbor. Let's start the truth. The 2007 to 2011 period, neighbor, was one of the worst period, neighbor, in the world. We had a global recession, neighbor. We had big economies like USA, China, and Europe. Those economies, neighbor, were contracting. Those economies were at last. And a small economy like Jamaica, neighbor, couldn't survive one of the worst recession, neighbor, in over 30 years. So we have to also understand that, neighbor. But yet still, neighbor, a lot of the programs, neighbor, the debt exchange from Ardley Shawn and Bruce Golding in the administration at that time, neighbor, and a lot of the financial programs, neighbor, helped brought us through that turbulence time, neighbor, Fast forward again, neighbor, to 2020, there's Jamaica Labour Party again, who brought us through COVID, neighbor, again, neighbor, something that affected not just Jamaica and our region, neighbor, world health hazard, neighbor, a crisis, neighbor, where so many millions of persons lost their lives, neighbor, as a result, neighbor, of the COVID-19. Persons were asked, neighbor, we couldn't social, we couldn't move from point A to point B. We had constant lockdown, neighbor. And it is just wonderful, neighbor, to know that COVID-19 affected us, neighbor, for so long, neighbor, and no one in the public sector lost their jobs, neighbor. No one in the hotel sector lost their jobs, neighbor, despite not turning up for work and being out of job work for so long. Because of the creativity at that time, neighbor, it was the first time in the history of Jamaica we saw where a package was remedied and put forward to the Jamaican people in the care package, where Jamaicans, neighbor, went out and picked up the 10,000 each. Never before that has ever done, neighbor. You know, persons who work in the tourism sector, neighbor, despite not being able to go to work, they were being given a stipend of about 18,000 every fortnight or something like that, neighbor, to offset their costs and to let the employees know that don't let go these people, keep them on board same way. So, neighbor, whatever we face, whatever we go through, neighbor, it has always been the Jamaica Labour Party. You look at Hurricane Beryl, the Jamaica Labour Party, neighbor. When you look at Hurricane, the largest hurricane, neighbor, to hit us this side of the world, neighbor, Hurricane Melissa, neighbor. And it's the Jamaica Labour Party again, neighbor. $10 billion Jamaican dollars being distributed, neighbor, in the recovery, neighbor, for persons. And I said $10 billion, I'm not talking about $10 billion in loan. I'm talking about $10 billion in grant, neighbor. And if a Jamaica economy like Jamaica, neighbor, can find $10 billion Jamaican dollars, neighbor, to give to its citizens, neighbor, to aid in the recovery, neighbor. That tell you how strong, neighbor, how strong the economy is, neighbor, how well Jamaica is doing. Because I can tell you, neighbor, I can recall a time in Jamaica history where the government could just take up $10 billion and just go give it away to people so to aid in the recovery, you know. So when you look at the People's National Party, neighbor, not an organization, neighbor, that goes through many natural disasters, neighbor. They're more creating man-made disaster. You look at Finac, neighbor, in the 90s. Finac wasn't a natural disaster, neighbor. Finac was a man-made disaster, neighbor. And I think it was orchestrated purposely to benefit and suit, neighbor, persons who were in line and in vision with the People's National Party, neighbor. A lot of those persons gained them wealth, neighbor, and the backs of Jamaican as a result of the collapse of the financial sector in the 90s. Even if you look right now, even persons in the PNP, the leader and the co-leader, neighbor, they also benefited tremendously, neighbor, from the downfall of a lot of our Jamaican citizens. So, until you look at the 90s again, neighbor, the 90s, no natural disaster. I was a child back in the 90s, neighbor, but I can't recall any major natural disaster, neighbor, any major hurricane, any major storm or anything like that, neighbor, that would set back the economy to a certain level. And it was a shame and a shock to know that it was man-made disaster, neighbor, that really set us back. And I think the only one that the PNP got to was Hurricane Ivan. Hurricane Ivan, a category 3 hurricane at the time, wasn't as much devastated as Melissa, but despite that, persons were displaced. And if you look at the timeline, neighbor, where we got back electricity compared to now, with a much higher, more devastated hurricane, neighbor, we outperform Ivan same way, despite Ivan being a less stronger force hurricane, neighbor, despite Ivan having a less impact, neighbor, in certain way and certain sectors, neighbor. We have still managed to recover faster in a Hurricane 5 hurricane, neighbor, category 5 hurricane, compared to Hurricane Ivan, which is a category 3. So I can say, neighbor, that the biggest destruction.
Only a few people get $16,000 from that hurricane, remember? Exactly.
The biggest destruction, neighbor, that has hit Jamaica right now is a man-made one, neighbor. And we have seen where we have managed to tame that destruction, neighbor. We have seen where we have managed to water down that destruction. We have it under some form of control. It is not a natural disaster, neighbor. It is a man-made one called the People's National Party. And we have had them in opposition for 3 consecutive terms, neighbor. Keeping them away from the wicked, keeping them away, keeping them at bay, neighbor. They come with high winds of poverty, neighbor. They come with high force winds of low employment. You know, they come with destruction. Not destruction in terms of infrastructure destruction, neighbor, but these persons come with direct destruction, neighbor, that affects our everyday neighbor life, you know. So I can say, neighbor, that right now the only destruction that we have faced with us right now is Hurricane PNP. We have managed to tame Hurricane Melissa, neighbor. Hurricane PNP, neighbor, is the only problem we have right now, neighbor. That's our biggest natural disaster. And it's such a shock, neighbor, and an embarrassment that over 400,000 Jamaicans, neighbor, still went out, neighbor, and support this hurricane, neighbor, and support this big destruction organization, neighbor. I tell you, these 400,000 Jamaicans, I'm a Jamaican, and I don't like to bash my fellow citizens, neighbor, but I am very disappointed in them, neighbor. I'm very much disappointed in these 400,000 Jamaicans who let this political organization believe that they are of any form of relevance. They're our biggest problem, neighbor. Jamaica's biggest threat right now is the People's National Party. And for Jamaica to grow, neighbor, the PNP must go.
Well, sir, well, fantastic. That's where we're going to have to put the wrap on the show tonight until...
Since slavery. Madam Speaker, who were the beneficiaries of this wealth transfer from the poor to the rich?
Harry,
Neighbor.
tomorrow the big show. Tomorrow the big show is on, and we look forward to that. We look forward to you joining tomorrow at 5 o'clock, sir.
I will, neighbor. I definitely will.
Yes, you are a very important part of the team, you know.
Our Caroline will personally come and find me, neighbor. I'm afraid I are.
Yes.
So yeah.
For Jamaica to grow, PNP must go. Look at that man, sir. That is the man, Mr. Golden. I tell you, the Golden was on his phone.
Is there anyone in this house who was a part of this ill-conceived policy, whose business it was to profit from the great transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich? This reminds me of the classic tale of what we in Jamaica sometimes regretfully call Butler's father, who caused the mother so much pain and then abandons the child. But when the child grows up to be successful, out of the blue they turn up to claim paternity and associate with success. This leader of the opposition is a man of convenience, flip-flopping between prudence and popularity when it suits him. 1 minute he disowns the child of fiscal discipline, and then the next he claims the child of fiscal discipline. The mother remembers the pain of Finac and the high interest rate policy, the largest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich. And she knows that she cannot trust this worthless man. So the DNA test was done. The DNA test was done. The results are in. When it comes to 15-year-old fiscal discipline, PNP, you are not the father.
Boy, I tell you, Harry, the PNP opened up a can of worms, did they not?
More than they even knew existed, because I don't think Julian probably realized what he was doing and all the
and this is not a new speech, you know, sir. You know, we have played it here several times.
Yeah, it definitely isn't, neighbor. But you know, I think, and again, he was trying to appeal to the vulnerable and the electoral vulnerable persons are set.
Yes.
Which are the 20-year-olds, because they are vulnerable, neighbor. Right?
Yes.
They wouldn't have known most of what happens, hence why we have programs like this. And as such, we have to impart and be truthful, using his words. We have to tell history and tell it truthfully, not by his truth, because in my book, neighbor, there's only one truth, and that truth has to be factual. It can't be a made-up thing. It has to be what Jamaicans lived. It has to be where the facts lies, and it can't be told by omitting information, because the tricky part about it, and it's distasteful as well, neighbor, is that when you omit, a government omits information about an era, what you're blatantly doing is dismissing the lived experiences of the people who lived that era. It's almost like you're discarding them as if nothing happened. And you can't do that to the people who you should be governing. And that is exactly what Julian Robinson did. Whether he knew that is the extent, he may be informed tonight. Because we know the People's National Party have a lot of persons listening on the For You page. And thanks for listening as well. We are reaching ears. But that is what it is, neighbor. If you're going to tell history and you want to tell it truthfully, you have to give all the information. You don't tell it piece and be intellectually disingenuous as you do it, because that won't bring you anywhere when the truth comes out. So that is really it, neighbor. And neighbor, and quickly, I just got an idea when I hear Andrew spoke of tail. In boxing, you have tail of the tape. I
Yes.
think we might have to do one of these evenings, a tail of the tape between both administrations in key areas. We could probably do that. Maybe something also visual. I'll see what I can do for those in terms of numbers. So the listeners can now be visual learners because we can put it up and so on. Maybe that it's not going to be too big. So
Yes.
some things may not be seen, but I think we have to bring forth the tail of the tape to see how both administrations match up so people can understand and see for what it is.
Absolutely. Fantastic stuff. Well, listeners, that's going to be it for us tonight. We discussed the prospects of dominant Labour Party government. Democracy is two-party, but we may be entering into a period of just one-party dominance because the structural indicators are in place and they suggest that the opposition is going to have a difficult time rebounding at this point. That's the podcast for tonight. I want to thank you for staying tuned. I want to thank you for joining us. And we will be here tomorrow at 5 p.m. to kick off a second year. Now, tonight ends 1 year of the podcast, and tomorrow we kick off a new year, year 2 of the Politics Plus podcast. We trust that you would join us. It's been a fascinating year with many challenges, many ups and many downs. You heard the moderator tonight speaking of some of the challenges that personally she came under. But we did it. We did it. And here we are tonight entering into a second year. Thank you so much. When we started 1 year ago, we had no idea that we would be where we are tonight. What a fantastic year it had been. It has been. And it's courtesy of all of you. So join us tomorrow at 5 o'clock, where we will celebrate with you, share with you, and commit to you for another glorious, successful year of the Politics Plus podcast. So until we join you tomorrow, take care of yourselves and have a great night. Please remember, we expect you to come here tomorrow.
Bailout intervention during the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009, 9%.
Supporting us, that is making it so as if somehow the government is. Oh, sorry about that. We have all type of things happening up on screen here at this Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome, neighbor.
Thank you. Shefreen, thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody. Catch you tomorrow.
Before neighbor go, please help me to get to 300K taps. So please give me that 300K taps before neighbor goes. Thank you so much for joining us, and we see you all again tomorrow at 5 p.m. Jamaican time, right, neighbor?
That's right.
Okay. So please help us to get to the 300K tap before neighbor closes off. Have a great night, neighbor. Harry, I'll see you tomorrow.
Hurry up and come in.
Leave it on the slum and come. Hurry up and